Hello, welcome back. I am Jaime Elizondo from Real Wealth Ranching, where my goal is to help you achieve the maximum profitability while improving your land the fastest. Today, I will talk about the difference between the total grazing program and other grazing programs out there. I do hope your holidays were great and that this New Year's Eve brings peace and resolution to be better in all aspects of our lives. I have been studying and implementing different types of grazing programs through all my life. Ever since I can remember, this has been the topic in my family. My grandfather, my father, my aunt, and my uncles were all cattlemen and cattlewomen. I love to observe nature and how plants, soil, and wildlife respond to different ways of grazing. And after teaching the total grazing program and traveling to teach courses and consult over many countries in different parts of the world, I can attest that the major problem worldwide is overgrazing. Now, overgrazing needs to be defined correctly. It is regrazing a plant before it has fully recovered, and overgrazing will weaken the plant, roots, and soil life. It's not taking the grass down to the ground if you do it fast and leave a long rest period, but it's grazing it and regrazing it before it has fully recovered. Now, overgrazing needs to be considered in a continuum, as it does not come from one isolated grazing event, but from many grazings where the grazers return to regraze before the plant has fully recovered. After many of these regrazings before the plant has fully recovered, your best or desirable species will weaken and eventually die, giving space to less desirable species or to brush to take over. In more arid landscapes, overgrazing does create a desert if done for long enough. Now, if you know someone that can benefit from this information that I'm going to give, please share this link with them. Thank you. What does overgrazing have to do with selective grazing? Well, first, let's define what is selective grazing. Selective grazing happens when livestock are allowed to consume only the parts of plants and species of plants that they prefer, leaving behind what they do not like so much. So we can also define it as a practice where the livestock are allowed to graze the best and leave the rest. This leads to low or poor harvest efficiency, which leads to shorter rest periods than if the harvest efficiency was high, and your livestock were grazing most of the available forage, right? Well, it happens that most of the grazing programs out there promote selective grazing, which at the high stocking rates required to achieve maximum productivity per acre, turns into overgrazing whenever there is a short-term dry period or an early winter onset or any other circumstances where the grass growth is lower than expected. Of course, those other programs teach you that this stocking, and they do a grazing chart, but avoiding overgrazing is much simpler than that, and you don't need to destock as much or as often. There is no need to overcomplicate things and have to destock unnecessarily. So why do they preach a grazing program where selective grazing is the norm? I believe it has to do with the livestock genetics most people use now. Modern genetics livestock tend to require more care, selective grazing to maintain their body condition and productivity, and are generally larger than livestock of, let's say, 70 to 80 years ago. Just ask any old-timer or your older relatives that had experience with older livestock genetics. Now, this relatively new modern genetics selected under artificial conditions require to only consume the best parts and species to remain productive. Wow. Well, we need to select livestock correctly, and under the total grazing program, we understand that most of the new humus created every year per acre is formed in the stockpile area when it's green, and it is the main reason we stockpile our grasses in area and not all over the place as in most all other grazing programs. Now, do you remember the definition of overgrazing? It is regrazing a plant before it has fully recovered. This means that when a plant is partially grazed and is regrazed again before full recovery, overgrazing is happening. And just as overgrazing is a continuum, building strong and deep roots in our grasses has a compounding effect, where your desirable grass plants get stronger instead of weaker when you allow them to fully recover before grazing them again. And this is possible only because you get a much higher harvest efficiency under the total grazing program than with a selective grazing program. Another important disadvantage of selective grazing programs is that the grass that was rejected by your livestock is what they now call stockpile, which in fact is rejected grass whose quality will be very low and very little humus will be created per acre per year. Now, did I mention soil life? Soil life feeds mostly on root exudates from the plant, and the leaf to stem ratio determines how much energy is left over after respiring to create plant growth and to feed your soil life through the roots. Why? Because green leaf creates energy by photosynthesis, while stems consume energy by respiring. Now, under a selective grazing program, what is left behind are mostly stems, as livestock prefer the leaf fraction, leaves, green leaves, which are much higher in digestibility and nutrients than stems. Conclusion and recap. 1. The definition of overgrazing is regrazing a plant before it has fully recovered, and it will weaken the plant roots and soil life. Number 2, what is selective grazing? It is a grazing practice where your livestock are allowed to graze the best and leave the rest. 3, modern livestock genetics have been selected for maximum individual performance and not for maximum productivity per ranch or farm or acre. And this has negative consequences as they demand a selective grazing program to maintain good body condition. 4, harvest efficiency or cow days harvested per acre per day determine the rest period of a certain paddock at the same stocking rate. This means that the more you harvest per day, the slower your herd advances through your land. Longer rest periods. 5, the leaf to stem ratio determines how much energy is created by photosynthesis in the green leaves and how much is used by respiring in the stems. This means that a grazing program that gives more green leaf per square yard will trump over a grazing system that leaves more stems as an aftermath. 6, overgrazing is a continuum, and if continued for a long enough time, will kill your best grass species. 7, just as overgrazing is a continuum, the total grazing program involves a continuum where your best species get stronger, with deeper and fatter roots that feeds your soil life much better and allows you to create much more humus per acre per year. 8, a complicated destocking plan and a detailed grazing plan are not necessary when implementing the total grazing program. 9, your stockpile grass area needs to be in area and not call the rejected grass all over the property a stockpile. It is not stockpile, it is rejected grass. 10, if you want to have more grass, higher quality forage, and knowing how much grass you have for difficult times, in a simple way, stop selecting grazing, which leads to overgrazing. Well, I hope you like this podcast and you can put it into practice. Thank you, and until next time, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube, or join us for the weekly email at www.rwranching.com/join. See you later.